Today's guest on the What Fuels You podcast is Loria Yeadon. Loria is president and CEO of the YMCA of Greater Seattle. She has a proven record of accomplishment serving on public, private, and nonprofit boards, managing P&Ls, building and leading global executive teams, and catalyzing action while driving social change. Prior to the YMCA, Loria spent over 14 years serving in many strategic roles within various industries and markets, including Honeywell and Intellectual Ventures. Loria serves on the board of directors of the Norton companies and Governor Inslee's Social Supports Leaders Advisory Group for Washington State. She is a champion and advocate for equity and justice for all, especially youth and families in marginalized communities. Loria currently lives in the Seattle area with her husband and 3 daughters. Welcome, Loria.
Thank you. So good to be here with you.
I miss you. It's been, I don't even know, a couple years since I've seen you in person. Too long, but soon.
Too long. Yes.
Soon. Okay, we're going to start our podcast with some rapid fire. There's so much I want to ask you. I tried to squeeze it in with some rapid fire in the beginning.
Good.
Okay.
Fire away.
Okay. What 3 words would describe your leadership style?
My leadership style. I would hope others would say empathetic and action-oriented. I think that's a hyphenated word. I can get away with that one.
Yes, you can.
And the third, I'd say strong.
Nice. So for you personally, what is your biggest fear?
My biggest fear is that my daughters will not have more opportunity than I've had. We're in an age where young women are at the right stage to be all they can be. And I see the clock turning back in some instances. And that drives me to push hard to make sure that doors remain open, opportunities remain open, choices remain open for young emerging women.
Yeah, I love it. Love it. Okay. I know you sit on so many boards. I couldn't believe it as I was preparing and how many things that you do. You're like a doppelganger of 2 people or something. I don't know how you find the time. So if there was a publicly traded company board, is there any that you have your eye on or ones that you would want to serve on?
Oh, wow. There are several, but rather than naming one, I'll give you the characteristics.
Awesome.
I'd say Fortune 500, mission focused with community in mind, very socially oriented, and a leader on all things social impact. A company that really cares about the future of our world and their investment in their products and their customers reflect that.
I love it.
And then, to boot, one that's, since I have such great innovation skills, being a patent attorney and an engineer and having worked in those fields for a long time, someone who would really value that skill set. And I could really leave my handprint on the company and help shape it into what it will be for the future.
Wow. I'm sure that you would have so many opportunities. I'm thinking of companies and I can't even imagine your list. And I'm sure you're on a million lists also. Okay. So if you had an extra hour in the day, how would you spend it?
Doing absolutely nothing.
I don't know if you could. Could you do it?
I don't. You're right. My days are quite packed. But what I find is when I really make space for quiet time, that's where my best ideas. And I unlock sides of myself that are really needed to make the next steps in the things that I'm working on for the YMCA of Greater Seattle or some of the community work that I'm doing. It's having that quiet space where my brain can just open up and yield, some great ideas.
Yeah, I get it. When you're like type A kind of driver, like you and I are, it's hard to create that space. So That's awesome. Okay.
But I own my type A-ness, just like you.
Yeah, it is. It is what it is. What it is.
is.
What was the first concert that you ever attended?
Oh, wow. First concert. I actually don't remember the first, but I remember an early concert.
Or your favorite concert?
So one of my favorites would be definitely Stevie Wonder. I saw Stevie Wonder at the Garden State Art Center in New Jersey when I lived there years ago. And I just remember just the talent, the commitment, the conviction to his craft. And he was funny.
He's incredible. I've seen him also. He's
such
incredible. And he's so
Stevie
talented.
Wonder. And then number 2 would be Lauryn Hill. But my favorite, the concert that I'm most anxious to go to is Bruno Mars.
So talented, incredible energy, great dancer. Yeah, great musician.
Yeah.
Okay, if there was a book that was written about your life, what would it be called?
I would say Dirt Road to Having It All.
Oh. The road.
I grew on a dirt road, and I am this person who believes that I can have it all. Being a mom, being a career person.
I think you do have it all.
And I do. That's my point. And as much as people say women can't have it all, they need to compromise, I'm not a proponent of that. And you can get there. You can get there from anywhere, even a dirt road.
Yeah.
So that would be the title of my book.
I would read it. If you could be a famous author, athlete, musician, or actor, which one would you choose?
Athlete.
What sport?
Gymnast.
Oh, were you a gymnast growing up?
I was never a gymnast, but boy, did I admire those women who could make those flips and do all sorts of things with their bodies.
Yeah.
I would do flips in my front yard, growing up in this rural space in Virginia, but I actually swore that I could be a gymnast. I don't know why.
What's your favorite movie genre?
I'd say nonfiction. I watched, there's a movie, I'm skipping the name of it. It's about a gentleman who's growing up, he had cerebral palsy and he wanted to wrestle. And it was based on an actual real story.
I saw this.
And I love movies like that.
So tell me so you grew up in Cambridge, Virginia,
yes.
the rural South. How was that upbringing? You're one of 4 kids, right?
One of 4.
And where are you in the whole birth order?
So I was a middle kid for a long, long time. My brother is 14 years younger. So by the time he came along as the youngest, I had already established my position as a true middle child. So 4 of us. Yes, a real dirt road. It's still a dirt road when I go back to visit and see our old home place. It was a rich experience. I didn't know how poor we were. My parents invested everything in us that they could. My dad had an 8th grade education. My mom got her nursing degree after I got my law degree.
Wow.
Just very committed to ensuring that their kids had every opportunity. I never remember either of my parents reading to me or asking me to do my homework, but I remember their work ethic and how they poured themselves into everything.
That's amazing. And are your siblings similar to you? Like, where did the drive come from? I think of you as being so driven. Like, is that, and as a parent, you're like, that's not something we can necessarily teach. It's like sometimes some of it is this whole nature versus nurture thing.
I think it's innate for the kids in our family. My older sister's a CPA. My youngest sister is a mathematician. She's an IBMer, and my youngest brother is working on his PhD in education right now.
Oh my gosh.
And I point to my parents. Again, they didn't have it. They didn't emphasize it. I mean, I don't even remember my parents reviewing my college applications. But I do know that all four of their kids, even with our pretty humble beginnings, we weren't the richest family on the block, but all of us came out of college debt-free. And
oh my
that's
gosh,
the biggest gift that our parents could have given us. And my dad passed away after I graduated, and my mom had two more kids to put through college, and she did it. And still, my two younger siblings came out of college debt-free. My parents were really focused on that, to giving us the best chance to be all that we could be.
So did you experience, teachers who gave you the message that you could go on to do great things?
I did, but I also had teachers who reminded me that young Black kids like me in rural Virginia weren't supposed to accomplish very much. And I had a combination, I'd say. Those who really, some of my teachers weren't very kind. I remember a guidance counselor, I went in for my senior year to talk about college and other things. And she said to me, maybe you should think about maybe going to a junior college, a 2-year college, studying liberal arts, maybe.
Why?
But I was the valedictorian of my high school class. And I had taken every science, every mathematics class by the time I completed my junior year. But this was her recommended path for me.
That's just straight up ridiculous racism. That's insane.
But, at the same time, I remember after that meeting, I went to visit with one of my teachers. She was the advisor for the National Honor Society. I was the president at the time. And she asked me, how did my counseling session go? And I told her what the counselor had to say. And she literally, I saw her throwing notebooks on the desk, and she began to pound the table to say, no, absolutely not. You will go to a 4-year university. You will go to a 4-year university. And you know what? You will study engineering. That's what you're going to do. You will go to engineering school. And I said, okay.
It's whatever you say.
She was so emphatic.
Wow. What were you kind of driven by or fueled by at that stage of your life in high school?
Yeah. Oh boy, I was one of those overachievers, and I attribute it to the fact there weren't a lot of things to do in my small town. And a lot of the kids in my community were not into very productive things. And I was pretty much a loner, aside from just a few friends here and there. And I kept myself busy just by throwing myself into my work. And what else could I accomplish? What else could I do? It kept me focused and not feeling that I missed being running with the crowd.
Yeah.
And so I think that drove me in a lot of ways. I had an older sibling who was also very driven, and I always wanted to do what she did or outdo her.
Yeah.
I think that was a motivator.
Right. I do have it written on my notes. I've just got a few core kind of themes here that I'm seeing, and I have in like bold highlights, overachiever, because I'm seeing this theme. I mean, even just saying I was valedictorian and president of National Honor Society, like it's from a young age, it's so innate for you. And then to go on, not just to get an undergraduate, bachelor's in electrical engineering from University of Virginia, great school. Then you also got a master's in electrical engineering and then went to law school. Like, who are you? It's crazy. Loria, it's amazing.
Yeah. I reflect on that now. I celebrate it on some level, but it also causes me to see other kids. Why are they so driven? What are they trying to turn their attentions away from? And for me, it really was not wanting to be caught up in bad things. I mean, there were kids, of course, there were kids doing drugs. There were kids who would hang out and get into bad things. And I never wanted to be part of that. And just being alone is not a good thing for a kid. And so I
Right.
really just threw myself into the work where I felt productive, where I felt that I was honoring the sacrifices that my parents were making.
Right.
And I always felt that there was something more that I was supposed to do. Never really knew what that was, but something in me said that there's something I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
And I think that drove me. I would say to parents, look out for your kids who are that driven. So while I'm glad that I had those opportunities to get into other things, I would caution parents because I wouldn't want my kids to be overachievers. There's a balance. There has to be a balance.
Well, it seems like it's also changed from when you and I were children. It now feels like such a pressure cooker. And because
Yeah.
we were just talking before we got on about mental health and how, May was mental health month. And half the parents I talk to have their kids, having challenges around anxiety and depression, and the suicide rates are up. And all of it, I think, is because of this overachieving society of like more and more and more. But yours doesn't sound like it was for the wrong reasons. It sounds like there was some sort of deeper belief in yourself that you wanted more, not that you were afraid that you would get like in trouble if you didn't achieve. There wasn't that helicopter parent.
I actually think there was a little bit of it. I mean, I was so convicted to not be involved in these bad things. And it's tempting to want to go with the crowd, to be where your friends are, others who are like you. You want to fit in. And when you make that choice, that you don't just want to fit in, it can be a very lonely space.
Right. And what was the community like? Was it a mixed community?
It was very mixed.
Racially
mixed, half and half. But it was very divided. It was basically two communities in a lot of ways. Everyone was cordial and all those nice things. There's some wonderful people from my hometown. My mom still lives there.
Wow.
But for those kids who are making that choice to not be afraid, to not run with the crowd, to be their own person, and to be supported in that space is really important.
Yes. So how would you describe your, your identity? What do you lead with?
I'm a community builder. I'm an advocate and proponent for all things equity and justice. I'm a mom who wants better for her kids. I'm a wife who's blessed with a wonderful husband. And I'm one of those people who've been put on this planet to help people.
Yeah. So it's interesting because your whole career in the beginning was like, a spin out from your degrees in electrical engineering, and then your law degree, which is an interesting pivot, I guess is the right word. And these themes about being kind of an operator and being in these companies that are hard driving. Do you feel like your job as CEO in the YMCA is like finally like where you're supposed to be and meant to be? Because all of these things probably prepared you to be a kick-ass leader in any area, any sector, any industry. But this feels like when I found out that you had this job, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's not only is she so perfect for the job, but it's so perfect for her.
Yeah. I have come home to where I'm supposed to be, for sure. But in retrospect, looking back, I see how everything I've done has prepared me for now.
Yeah.
And if I did have a question mark in coming to the Y, how do you bring, having led international teams, set up businesses globally, having generated billions of dollars a year, large teams, having done all those things. Now the Y, now the YMCA, how does all this fit together? If I had a question at all, those questions were answered during the pandemic, because my instincts as a leader, all that I've learned was brought to bear and to help the Y through, I'd say, one of its toughest periods in history. So I was very grateful. It became enormously clear to me why now and why the why. And I also got really clear on all of those lessons that I learned years ago. And I'm so glad I didn't dismiss them. And I know sometimes it's hard when you get these tough lessons because you ask yourself, how am I ever going to use this? Well, that question was answered last year.
I'm
because
sure.
I had to use it all. I
want to hear all about it. I'm super interested in how I was thinking about your business this past year and how it's been impacted. But before we get into that, I do want to hear about a little bit more about the journey. So when you graduated, like, what was your first job out of school?
So right out of college, I went into the telecom industry. I worked for Bell Communications Research as a fiber optics engineer. And I did some research and I did some field work, a combination of things using my engineering skills. And during that time is when I also went back for a year to get my master's degree. And the company I was working for, I was so fortunate, they paid for it. So it was just a great time to go deeper in my engineering career. And so I worked for Bell Communications Research, Bellcore, and was about to go back to get a PhD in electrical engineering. And I had an offer in my hands and just realized, I don't think that it's going deeper in engineering. I don't think that's what I'm supposed to do. And I rejected it. People told me I was absolutely bonkers. It was a full free ride with a salary that was paying more than my engineering salary at the time. But I really felt that I was being called to do something more. And it was about maybe 3-4 months later, the same company announced a program where they would send 2 engineers to school at night to become patent attorneys.
Oh my God.
And I was fortunate enough to be selected for that program to go to school at night and to work by day towards becoming a patent attorney. And that's how it happened.
That's incredible. Was that a good choice for you?
Fantastic choice. My law degree is probably the degree that I appreciate the most.
Yeah.
Really rounded me out, gave me a different lens on looking at the world, on everything.
Yeah.
And it really helped me to stay broad in how I think about life. So being a patent attorney, applying technology, a lot of different technologies in a lot of different spaces, it was just great, especially given my analytical focus and my love for technology.
Yeah.
It's a great space for me.
Awesome. And you did talk about a little bit about these leadership principles and all the things that helped prepare you for this role. What are some of those lessons that you've learned throughout your career?
Yeah. So the biggest one for me during the pandemic was to see opportunity even in crisis. And out of that, the Y did some pretty fantastic things, even while we're trying to survive in the midst of crisis. And it was because I kept that at the fore. I mean, we actually signed a purchase sale agreement to buy 2,000 acres to start our first new camp in 100 years during the pandemic. And we're going to close on it, hopefully in another few weeks. And we also completed an acquisition of a mental and behavioral health nonprofit in Auburn to help that service remain in the Auburn community. We completed that last July. We also we increased the number of beds for homeless youth by 30%.
Wow!
Even though our revenue was significantly cut, we were closed down. We were still able to grow, and it was because of that opportunity mindedness that I think I acquired from my manufacturing days, having gone through so many pandemics of sorts in my prior life. Yeah. So yeah, all of that brought to bear during the pandemic.
Yeah, well, it sounds like are you more kind of, when you're making these decisions in life or in business, are you more kind of gut or data or a combo?
Combo for sure, but definitely gut.
Yeah, because you have made some interesting career and life choices that have all been incredible. I mean, from where I sit, and we all have, of course, things that we not necessarily regret, but are opportunities where a door closed, but maybe a window opened.
Yes.
So I'm curious, when you are considering or making choices on either companies or boards, what attributes are most important? Are you looking at the product, the service, the culture, a combo?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A lot of instinct, which should be always grounded in data, but the data is in the whole story. And I have a pretty strong gut that sometimes yells, even when the data suggests going in one direction. If my gut is unsettled, I get more data and I have more conversations with people whose opinions I trust to help me figure out what is it that my gut is trying to tell me. It's not always easy for others to see. My gut tends to tell me not just what's in front of me, but what's down the road and around the corner. And I've learned to trust it and lead from that space. 99% of the time, my gut is right. But
Wow.
My gut is also shaped, though, by data, too. I mean, you cannot ignore data.
Yeah. Well, now that we have access to it, it's almost like irresponsible to not,
it is,
to not take
absolutely.
it in. Yeah. And so is there a process, though, or is it that you go through? And when you say that you go to your trusted advisors, is that a kind of formalized group of people, or it just depends on what type of decision?
I have a big kitchen cabinet of people, and it's not the same people. But it's people who are in my extended circle who I believe might have something that might inform my decision making, or might be helpful to broaden my thinking, or who might give me another lens to look through to assess a situation. Sometimes I think my gut tells me you don't know enough yet, so put the brakes on.
Slow
and
it
just
down.
ask more questions.
Yeah. And
not necessarily get more data, but just hear from more people to make sure that I'm looking at the situation broadly enough.
That makes sense. And as a community leader, I'm sure that you serve as this person for so many people. Are you a formal mentor for people, or is it informal where you just know that because I know that you've been a great leader, not just in the community, but advocate for women and people of color. And so are there people that you're officially mentoring?
I think some would say yes. I mean, there are people that I check in on. I've learned that when I was ready, a teacher appeared. And so I'm the teacher for some people, and I'm supposed to be there to help other people take the next step in their journey. And sometimes my gut just says, you need to call this person, check in on them. It's because maybe there's something that I have that they might need. I intuit that sometimes, and I will check in. But I tend to be open. I tend to open my calendar, time on weekends to just have conversations with people. I'm part of a women's group, and we advise each other just to have conversations, and that's awfully rich. There's a lot of wisdom.
Sure. Those are always the best.
Among those groups. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So I make that a priority to go into those spaces so that I can learn, but also so that I can benefit someone else. I mean, you get, but you also give. The reciprocity of it is what makes it special.
Yeah. And were there moments in your career where doors closed or promotions weren't given, and lessons have been taken from those experiences?
Yeah. No, doors have closed in different ways. I'll give you one example. When I was planning to go to engineering school, I really wanted to go to Virginia Tech. I hope my UVA friends aren't listening. But I applied early admit to go to Virginia Tech. And I got in, and I was over the moon. My parents, because my older sister was going to University of Virginia, my parents said, we really think you guys should go to the same school together. to be better. You could support each other. And I was bummed by that because I had my sights set on going to Virginia Tech. And it really pained me to have to pull out from Georgia Tech, but I'm sorry, from Virginia Tech. And but then I went to University of Virginia, and I can't imagine having gone anywhere else to engineering school.
Yeah.
Best grounding, best relationships today that I've ever had in my life. So
I love that.
I think sometimes you trust the universe.
I was about to say, I love you so much, Loria. I was like, she's
you have to trust the universe.
You got to trust in the universe. I totally believe that.
Yeah. And
totally believe that.
See the opportunity in whatever is happening. And, there have been times that, there's been rejection. There are times I've applied for some opportunities and they didn't come through. And then you ask yourself, why? What do I learn from this?
Right.
And what do I trust in this moment? Is it that the next opportunity is ahead of me, a better opportunity is ahead of me? Or is it that I'm supposed to stay where I am? It gives you the opportunity to ask those questions of yourself.
Yeah.
And that's probably the best outcome in failure is the self-assessment. So if you can take the lessons, in the moment, it will propel you to where you're supposed to be, where you're supposed to go, what you're supposed to accomplish.
Well, speaking of supposed to be, like, how did you even end up in Seattle? Is that from Intellectual Ventures?
Oh, it is from Intellectual Ventures. I was the CEO of Honeywell's intellectual property company based in Phoenix, Arizona. I'd been there for 6 years, and Intellectual Ventures called, and they called. And they called, and I wasn't really responding. And then one day I decided to respond. They invited me to come up for a visit, and I did. And the night after the visit, I stayed up all night long. I just could not sleep. My mind was blown at what they were trying to do. And I felt like I really needed to be part of it. And so the family moved from Arizona to we live on Mercer Island now. So we've been here since 2009.
How did the girls take that news? Because it is very different, Arizona to Seattle.
Oh, yes. It was difficult in the beginning. We actually took the girls to Olive Garden to break the news that we were moving. And before the meal arrived, we had to leave the restaurant because our girls literally stretched out hit the floor. They were protesting.
They were little and crying.
Oh man, they were not. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They made quite the scene.
Seattle's beautiful. But one of the things that I'm aware of having left and then come back is Seattle's lack of diversity. Mm. And so how is that for you? And how does that, I can't understand what that feels like as far as the diversity that I don't experience. I don't experience it in the same way as you.
Yeah. Yeah.
How is that here, and how do you make sure that you are a positive role model in that way?
Yeah. First, let me go back to Arizona because there wasn't a lot of diversity there either. Yeah. We lived in Ahwatukee, which is kind of the Scottsdale of Phoenix, is the way it's described. Yeah. There wasn't a lot of diversity. And by the way, we moved here, and I made the promise to my older daughter that if she wanted to move back for her senior year in high school in Arizona, that I would personally move back with her. And this is how we convinced the kids to come to Arizona.
And then you just cross your fingers.
And when we got to the senior year, I said to her, so Mom made a promise. What do you want to do? She says, what are you talking about? And she said, I cannot think of having gone to high school anywhere else. This is where I'm supposed to be, Mom. So it does all work out in the end.
Yes.
But yes, there is a lack of diversity, especially on Mercer Island. There are ways that we still remain very connected. There are organizations like Jack and Jill of America that I've been a part of since I moved here. And we make a point of connecting ourselves with other communities so that our kids have that exposure to more kids who look like them.
Exactly.
More kids who are on a similar path, academically, and have shared values. And they're everywhere, but it's harder in the Seattle area to connect with folks. So you have to be intentional about it. But we have connected with communities of people of color, and it's been great for us. But I'd love to have more people of color here.
Absolutely.
And I'm constantly.
I crave it. I'm always.
Yeah. When I see someone else coming, I reach out and I say, hey, I see that you're moving to Seattle. I just wanted you to know I'm here, whatever I can do, to help you get connected. I'm happy to do it, because that's what it takes.
Yeah.
Not only to attract people to Seattle, but to encourage them to stay, to have them make this home. We have to do it for each other.
How do you balance it all? I'm slightly fascinated by the whole idea of it, and how, because I'm assuming we're the same, we're just love children, kind of how we just kind of level the playing field on this conversation and just make it, we're all in the same boat, trying to give our kids the best possible opportunities, but also exposing them as much as possible to people who are like them, so they can feel that connection to our heritage, really.
Yeah. Like them, not like them.
Yeah.
Finding commonality, being open to everyone. Those are the key aspects of that adjustment and building those connections.
Yeah, I think so. So your YMCA thing, because we haven't actually gotten a catch up moment since you accepted this role. I'm curious how it came to you. It came to you, or you went to it?
Well, I got a call indicating that the Y was looking for its next leader, and asked me if I might be interested in coming into the search. And growing up in Cambridge, Virginia, there was no YMCA, and I had not been a traditional Y kid. So I didn't know as much as I would have liked to have known about the YMCA of Seattle. We were members of the Y and part of the Y in Arizona. So I knew that it was generally a great outreach organization. But I decided to go out for a half day with the past board chair, and mind blown. It was similar to the experience that I talked about with Intellectual Ventures. I could not sleep the night following. It was the same thing with the Y. I just thought, oh my God, what on earth could we accomplish with me bringing to the table my leadership and my commitment to community? And I didn't know if I would be selected, but I felt I needed to put my hat in the ring. I felt like there was something that I could offer that would benefit community. And I needed to put my hat in the ring and see what happened. And I did. And here we are. And so you went in not knowing as much, because you said you didn't grow up as a Y kid. What have you learned? Tell us all that we need to know about. Obviously, we could do that as a whole other podcast, but I'm curious about the core tenets as far as the programming. Yeah.
Who are the Y kids and how can we help?
Mm-hmm. Well, the YMCA of Greater Seattle is a 145-year-old organization. And you find generations of YMCA members and participants. I mean, we have kids in our childcare center, and they're dropped off by grandparents who were kids in our childcare centers. I mean, I'm talking about deep legacy, deep history among people who've been served by the Y and contributed to on multiple levels the YMCA. So, what I didn't understand, everybody knows about the Y and membership model. You can go work out, you can go swimming, you can learn how to swim, but not many people appreciate the depth of the services that's provided, especially on the social impact side. The Y is the biggest provider of housing and wraparound services for youth and young adults who are homeless in our region. We also are a foster family licensing agency. And so we are recruiting families all the time Our pipeline is so anemic for foster families, and there's so many kids who are waiting for their short-term and forever home. And some of the kids that we house include kids who age out of foster care. And so on the social impact side, there's a lot that the Y does. Mental health, behavioral health services, that's a big part of the work that we do, not just for kids, but for teens, for families, for adults. And that's an area that we've really grown in during the pandemic. We also offer the 211 program for our county, where if there is a family in distress because a youth is having issues, a family can call 211, and within 2 hours, somebody from the Y will show up at your door to provide support for the youth and for the entire family. And our goal is to help that kid stay stably housed with their family and provide the vital services that they need. And of course, I talked about camp, but that's a big part of our mission because, nature and the outdoors for youth and families, the outcomes are just over the top. And we don't have enough of it for all the kids who really need it the most, which is why we're so excited about starting this new camp down south. And then we have pre-pandemic about 70 childcare centers. We're one of the biggest childcare providers in the state. And we're really proud of that because we know that all things start with education. And if we can help young people be kindergarten ready and to stay on track with their education, we can cut off a lot of those very detrimental outcomes for kids. So that's a big, big part of our mission. So I've just begun to scratch the surface, but all of those things are part of the Y. And right now, by the way, if you haven't been vaccinated, you can go to the Y to get vaccinated because we host vaccination centers at our branches. We're there for whatever the community needs.
It's incredible. And so how many branches are there?
There are 14 branches, and they extend from our North Shore branch, which is up north on the east side, Shoreline, our Dale Turner branch up north, all the way down to Auburn. We have a branch, and as far east as Snoqualmie.
Interesting. And then tell me about the fundraising, and are there formal programs or events around it?
Yeah. We have our annual fund drive, but we fundraise all year long, especially during the pandemic. The need is so significant. The needs, even now, there are significant needs as people look toward recovery, but we don't really have the infrastructure yet in place for everyone to recover, and people need some additional help. And everything is different than it was pre-pandemic. We look to community to walk alongside of us. And, the other big part of the Y is the equity and justice focus that we bring to everything we do, everywhere we do it. And we have doubled down and put both feet in our mission statement and our equity statement during the pandemic, the dual pandemics, I should say, COVID-19 and systemic racism.
Yeah. All hitting at once.
All hitting at once. And we saw
it was a lot.
Because of the inequities, for example, as it relates to chronic disease and things like that. The Y has really taken a bigger stance so that we can cut off a lot of those disparate impacts going forward.
And so for a family, it costs like $150 a month, right?
Yes. But, and I'm glad you're asking this question because a lot of people who don't know the Y don't recognize that the Y has a sliding scale, meaning that anybody and everybody can afford to be a member of the Y. It's income-based, and we find a solution for everybody. What we care about is everybody being able to take care of their health, their whole person health, physical and mental. And it starts with these services that we provide at the Y, from diabetes prevention, Lose to Win, which is helping people adopt healthy lifestyles so they can physically be well. And we offer those mental health services, cooking classes, all of those
things incredible.
At the Y.
I mean, you've made such an impact already. What is your kind of long-term vision and goal? Like, what do you hope to accomplish if we're talking 5 years from now, like a look back?
Yeah. So I'm so glad you asked that, because my leadership team, we're in the midst of developing our strategic operating framework to breathe life into our vision statement out 2025 and beyond. And some of the big things that we are beginning to anchor around is this concept of whole person health, with a trauma-informed component, equity and justice at its core, focused on marginalized communities, including BIPOC community. That's where we know we need to go deeper. We don't ever want to find ourselves in a place where we have programming that could help reduce chronic disease, and then to find that people die in a pandemic like like COVID-19 because they are exposed to chronic disease. So we want to do something preemptively, proactively, to help everyone take care of their health, so that they're healthy, they're strong, they have a better quality of life. We also want to, as part of that, to be in a position where your zip code doesn't dictate your life expectancy. And we know right now there is an 18-year differential between Auburn and Bellevue, just based on where you live. Your life expectancy.
Doesn't that have to link? It's not linked. It's such a deeper, bigger conversation.
It is.
Isn't it around everything that encompasses, from access to healthy food to access to, better schooling, all of it.
All of it.
It's all of it.
Right. And so what are those interventions that the Y can offer to enable everyone to have a healthy quality of life and to achieve their full potential?
Yeah. And so the keeping you up at night thing, that's like, how do I accomplish this? Is this a marketing? I mean, from an exposure perspective, like how do I make sure that anyone who could be in our target demographic, I think you're serving over 260,000. So it's like, but how do they know if they don't know? Is it a marketing thing, or is that partnerships?
Yes. And to know that they know the Y is here, but to know that the Y is a place for them to feel and be welcomed and to belong and to take care of their health. That's the key message. Is that next piece to know that there is something for them, and that we would welcome them with open arms to join us as they take care of their health, and to share the word, because it's important for all of us to do this and to do it for each other's sake.
Yeah, you are so the perfect person to be leading the charge here. I know you're going to accomplish all sorts of things and beyond, and continue to be such an incredible community builder and leader. I'm so grateful to have you on the podcast. My final question is, what fuels you?
The hope and possibility of tomorrow for our children. We have such a big vision and mission. And in order to fulfill it, we need people to walk alongside of us. And so I would invite those who are, who have a similar mindset of helping community, join us, walk with us, invest in us, because we have the programming, we have the plan. We just need more support, and we need more volunteers. We need more people to walk alongside of us.